Challoner. Today I'm cooking a red mullet with a vanilla and Jerusalem artichoke puree, along with some nettle oil and a pumpkin fondant. I am going to show you how to make the oil, but with coriander. So the inspiration behind the dish itself, I like to play a lot around in the kitchen, so I try to pair what's in season with the foods that I'm able to make. So today, for example, red mullet's nice and it's in season. I like to order it fresh, locally, so I use Ashton's. Same with the veg, I like to order locally, so I order from Bishop's. Again, they're local to Cardiff. So I've cut this pumpkin in half, and as you can tell, it's really nice and orange. I'm going to discard the seeds, because they're not very good at the minute. So obviously these pumpkins have just come into season. Now normally what I would do is I would take the seeds out, wash them, dry them and deep fry them so you could use them as a crisp element to the dish. But today, sadly, looking at these, I'm not going to. So now again, I'm going to cut down the middle because it's a big pumpkin, if I can. There we go. So next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to peel him with a knife so you get nice little edges off him. So the next thing we're going to do now is we are going to cut straight down here. So you want to be able to make yourself a nice fondant, pumpkin fondant. Now some of your pumpkins that you get on the day, they might not be ones that you're able to make cylindrical shapes out of. So I'll show you one that you're able to do on the day, which you could do some kind of rectangle shape if you wanted to. And then I will show you another cut down when I'm able to cut a cylindrical shape out of. So I have to cut off the edges because I want to make sure it's flat. Again, these are a lot more trickier than cutting into a potato because they're not the best shape. So you are going to want to cut off this bit here just to make it nice and flat. Now what I tend to do with any kind of fondant, I normally peel around the side. So when it caramelizes in the pan, it will leave you a nice color on the sides. So just round there. So caramelization is where you put a bit of butter in the pan, for example, or a bit of oil, but you do finish it off with butter. So you will get a nice brown color on this side of the pumpkin. The same with the potato, the same with any kind of vegetable. So with the pumpkin fondants made into shape, you will also have a lot of pumpkin left over. So if you wanted to, you could make a soup, you could make a stock. We're not going to do that today, but on the day you might want to. So with this pan, I'm going to put it on the heat. I'm going to turn it up as much as I can. Then I'm going to add a little drizzle of oil. Let that warm up nicely in there. So while we wait for that to warm up, we can get on with peeling the Jerusalem artichokes. So this is a root vegetable, hence why I'm using the brown board. I'm peeling on this brown board because it's a vegetable. Same as the pumpkin. A lot of other things have come into place at the minute, like the red onion. You would normally peel on the brown board, and then you would put the red onion back on the green board to cut, because it's classified as a salad ingredient, which is a strange one, because obviously you've got to use the brown board and then you've got to go onto the green board. So yeah, just make sure you're using the right coloured coded chopping boards when prepping vegetables. So I'm going to start cooking the pumpkin fondants now in the little bit of oil that you saw me put in there earlier. So all I'm going to do is face down like so, turn the heat down a second. If you attempt to use your fingers, don't use a pair of tongs when doing this because the oil is very hot. So as you can see, you start to get a nice bit of colour on both sides. So now all I'm going to do is put a tiny bit of butter in there, like so, and just let that melt in there. Again, being careful it doesn't burn. Now you've got that buttery goodness in there now, soaking into this pumpkin here, which we're going to get all the flavour from. Fab. So the next thing we're going to add to the pumpkin fondant is some thyme, some garlic, and then we're going to finish it off with water, and we're just going to let it simmer for about 20 minutes. So all you need is 1 clove of garlic, crushing this garlic because as soon as you crush this, the flavour comes out straight away. I'm only adding it to the stock just to create a flavourful stock for the pumpkin fondant. Add the crushed garlic and the sprigs of thyme to the pumpkin fondant mix, like so. So we're just going to put them in there, along with the garlic, and then we're going to add the water. Now I'm using water today and not vegetable stock or chicken stock because there's enough flavour in that pan with the garlic, the thyme, the butter, and I'm going to also add a bit of salt now to finish it off. Like so. So I'm just going to let that simmer for roughly 20 minutes or just until it's very tender, but I still like the pumpkin fondant to have a bite when you're eating it. I don't like it to be mushy. I'm just going to add a bit of black pepper in there. Pinch of salt also, just to add to that flavourful stock in there. So now we're going to do the Jerusalem artichoke and vanilla puree. So what you need is get yourself one shallot like so. You want to cut at the end. You cut down the middle like so. And then we want to discard of the skin because we don't need that. Down lengthways. And then we're going to go down the middle. So this is what I'm doing here is a fine dice of this shallot. So in doing this, when I'm cooking it, it won't take that long to cook in the oil. And we'll do the same with the other one. Be careful of your fingers as you are going to be cutting quite deep there. And again the same, ensuring your fingers are tucked back, so if you do cut yourself, you will only cut that layer of skin and not your finger. Perfect. Now the shallots are cut, we'll start with the Jerusalem artichokes. We'll cut down the middle with these. And we'll do the same like we did with the shallot, but we won't cut lengthways up. I've got a pan on the heat here, on high. So what I'm going to do is add a little olive oil. Then I'm going to sweat off the shallots. So the shallots are nearly there now. As you can see, they're quite translucent. They're about 2 minutes away from being cooked. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add the Jerusalem artichokes to this dish. And then I'm going to give it a quick stir. Because like I said before, we've got to be careful that we don't catch the bottom, which means you don't burn the bottom of the pan because you're not stirring enough. So as you can see here, obviously the heat is actually starting to burn the pan itself. So while that sweats off in there, the next part of the dish is a vanilla pod scraped. Now sadly today I couldn't get hold of any, but what you would normally do was you would cut down the middle of the vanilla pod lengthways, and then you would scrape the inside out, and then you would add that to this dish. So you might get vanilla pods. I couldn't get any, I couldn't source any sadly, so I will be using this today. So if you do use this instead of vanilla pod, all you need is about 10 grams worth. So I'm just going to tip that in there and let that soak up the other flavours inside. Next thing we're going to add to this now is the cream. I think the recipe states 150 grams, so that's how much I'll add. 150 gram of cream in here now. Now I tend to do it by eye, only because I've been doing it a long time, so I can understand how much I need, how much goes into the dish. So I'm also going to add a sprig of thyme also. Just add that to the dish in there. Swish him around a little bit. So we're just going to let that reduce by half. Let the cream, the artichoke, the shallots and the vanilla infuse together, and then we will blend that until it's silky and smooth at the very finish. I'm reducing this dish here, so all that means is I'm going to reduce it by half. So I'm going to let this simmer until the volume of the liquid is halved. So then all your flavour is in that other half of the liquid at the bottom, so it's been reduced so much it's thicker, it's nicer, it's creamier. Okay, so now we're going to make our nettle oil, but in my case the coriander oil. So I've got a bowl of cold water here, which I'm going to refresh the coriander in after I have boiled it for about 20 seconds. Now you can't boil it for any longer, otherwise you'll discolour the leaves and the taste will just become, it won't be pleasant. So like I said, 20 seconds at most. Submerge the nettles, or in my case, the coriander. Okay, so I'm blanching this coriander for 20 seconds because it's just enough time where the leaves won't discolour and I'll be able to keep that fresh, fragrant colour while I'm mixing it with the oil at the very end. The leaves are still very green, very fragrant. So I'm going to take that off and I'm going to place that in the cold water. Now with your nettles, like with this coriander, it smells really, really nice. Very fragrant. The colour is still nice and green, which is what you're going to need when you're making the oil to finish off. Okay, so now with the coriander, in your case nettles, hopefully you can get them on the day, I'm going to take as much liquid out of this as I can, because when I'm mixing it with the oil, I don't want any remaining parts of the water in to discolour, otherwise it will turn brown. So you've got to make sure you squeeze it thoroughly. So we're going to add that to the blender. We're going to add the oil, like so. And we're going to blend for roughly about 2 minutes until it's all combined. Okay, so this is just finished blending. So as you can see, it's very green, very nice, and the smell is phenomenal. So I'm going to pass this through a chinois, which is a very fine sieve. So while we start for the pumpkin fondant and the Jerusalem artichoke and vanilla puree to finish, I'll tell you a little bit about myself, what I do, my background. So like yourselves, I've been to college. I did my MVQ level 2 and 3, and then I did my level 3 supervision and front of house silver service. So unlike most of you, I've done back and front of house, only because I wanted to learn both parts. I knew from a young age I wanted to be a chef, so I knew that's where I would take myself. So I don't know if any of you have heard of the Classroom on Dumballs Road. It's a college and they've got their own independent restaurant upstairs. I worked there many years ago where I managed to get the first college rosette for Wales and then the second one just as I left. So there, for example, we used to teach the students, they used to come into the restaurant, we used to let them run a service, we used to let them do their mise en place with us. So that was it was nice to see, obviously, because I'd come from that background myself. It was very nice to be able to help students also, like my tutors back then helped me. So I remember working in the classroom and a well-known critic walked past the window into the restaurant and had food. Now he's very well known in London and across the UK. I can imagine Europe as well, if I'm honest. So it was an honour and a privilege to cook for someone who actually gave us great feedback on our food. Now it wasn't just me who did the food, it was the students, it was everyone. We were all part of a team. So we all took credit for that. But I'd just like you to have a think about what critics there are about, who they are, you know, and that kind of thing. Okay, so the Jerusalem artichoke and vanilla puree has reduced by half, as you can tell. You see all those lovely flavours in there and all that colour. I'm just going to blend this now until it's silky and smooth. I'm going to heat that up. You want to make sure your pan is as hot as it can be because you want to make sure that you get a crispy skin on your fish. Just going to add that to the pan. Now be careful because the oil is going to spit. So what I suggest you is have some kind of fish slice or a spatula and press it down. But don't burn yourself. Like I said, skin side down. Just be careful of the oil spitting. Just gonna add a tiny bit of salt, not too much. And I'm also gonna add, which you may sound very bizarre, black crushed peppercorns. Now, a lot of people with this kind of fish like to use white pepper. Now, I think the taste comes from black pepper, and I thoroughly enjoy working with it, if I'm honest. So just be careful when trying to take the fish apart from the pan. I'm gonna flip the mullet over, because I think it's had enough time on the bottom with the skin. Now, can you see now that is nice and crispy? So the next thing we're gonna do, I'm gonna add a little bit of butter, that crushed garlic and a sprig of thyme. Now, the whole reason I'm using the butter, the thyme and the garlic is to get as much flavour into that fish as I can. Again, be careful of spitting. Make sure we cover that nice flesh there. So I'm going to turn it back over again. And I'm going to baste the fish until it's cooked. So basting it all means you're trying to get as much flavour into it and also finish off the cooking. Now, as you can tell, it's basted for about 20 seconds roughly, because the fillets are very small, so it isn't any longer than that. So how I can tell that it's cooked, just by touching the top and I've got a bounce. Can you see? That means it's perfectly cooked. Any longer and it would have been overcooked, and it probably wouldn't have been pleasant to eat, if I'm honest. So the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to transfer onto some blue roll on a tray, just to discard any of that liquid. The Jerusalem artichoke and vanilla puree here, all I'm going to do is put it through the fine chinois so we can get a very smooth and silky finish. The best thing about the Jerusalem artichokes is, we'll find out when you get to taste this dish, is the nutty flavour you get from the vegetable itself. So you're probably wondering why I've added vanilla to such a nutty vegetable. But if I'm honest with you, it just goes really well. And it's one of those dishes that you can pair with almost anything. So with the red mullet, for example, you know, you've got a nice delicate bit of white fish, the nutty flavour, the vanilla. In your case, you might have the nettle, which is fantastic. So again, that'll be a peppery taste. Nettles taste almost like spinach in a way, or nasturtium leaves if you've ever had any. Okay, so we're going to place up the dish now. We've got all our elements together. So you've got your artichoke puree, your nettle oil, your fish that's been lovely basted in nice butter, and then you've got your pumpkin fondant. So, I've got this lovely dish here, which I'm going to use. So firstly, I'm going to place the pumpkin fondant about here, and as you can tell, it's nice and firm, just how we wanted it to be. Again, that takes about 20 minutes to cook. Okay, and then we're going to add our puree, silky and smooth puree. Tidy them up a little bit, there we go. And then we're going to get this lovely bit of fish here. Which is falling apart because it's been cooked so beautifully. Just going to place him there. So as you can see already with all the colourings, you've got the orange, you've got the red mullet there, then you've got the puree, and then now the coriander oil. Just going to dot this round. So the final dish, which is your pumpkin fondant, your red mullet, your Jerusalem artichoke and vanilla puree with a coriander oil.